Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Blue Devil Beat. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, here joined by my co-host, Caleb Dudley. Caleb, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. It's been a long last 48 hours.
It has, yeah. What have we been up to the past 48 hours?
Well, as of the time of recording this, we just landed back in RDU from New Orleans about 2 hours ago. So went yesterday down to Tulane, covered the game, and then came back early this morning. So now we're back on the podcast.
Yeah, a little 4 a.m. wake up there. But yeah, we were covering Duke's contest against Tulane, and we'll talk all about that today. We'll break it down, talk about what went wrong for the Blue Devils in that 34-27 loss, second straight loss for Manny Diaz's group. And then super exciting later on, we're going to have Daniel from The Technician to preview Duke's first ACC matchup against NC State, which will be next week. So super excited to talk to him. But yeah, this will be a great episode. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise brought to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all of your Duke merch. All right, so Tulane game breakdown here. We'll start with big picture takeaways and then kind of talk about players here, but really kind of the same story of last week of self-inflicted wounds and a lot of uncharacteristic misses from the Blue Devils. What did you see from that game?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, I think you're exactly right. It's starting to get to a point where it's getting a little concerning. It wasn't the same mistakes they made last week against Illinois, but again, remember, just different mistakes, so which honestly is maybe a little bit worse. The big thing I thought was obviously Jake Retzlaff was the story there, replacing Darian Mensah at Tulane. He had 4 rushing touchdowns. He's 1 away from the program record. And he got everything he wanted on the ground last night against the Blue Devils. I thought they did a really poor job containing him in the pocket. I mentioned last week on the podcast that I thought that was the key to the game, was keeping him in the pocket. And they did a really bad job. And when they did have a chance to get him in the backfield, they would miss a lot of tackles, miss a lot of sacks. And so that was the main thing for me, just not the way we're used to a Duke defense playing the last couple of years. Guys that usually are pretty secure, just not playing up to their potential. So that's the main thing with defense. And then the second thing was special teams. It's just been so bad this year. I know it's the most or the least talked about phase of the 3, but it's still really important. Obviously, we saw that last night. Duke left 9 points on the board. 1 missed field goal after back-to-back false starts on field goal. Then we had a botched hold from Katie Reynoldson, and then also a blocked field goal. And this comes after a muff punt last week and a penalty on the punt return that would have got Duke the ball back. And so it's really bad. Those are things that are easy to control. Not something that, Duke's not talented enough to play special teams. They know how to play special teams. But just some things that are really glaring at this point to me that I think need to be fixed fast.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that defense for a little bit because Retzlaff, you're right, was able to have 4 rushing touchdowns, and his dual threat ability was really able to open up some passing lanes later in the contest. In that second half, he threw for 250 yards, I think, as well. It seemed to me, you're right, there was a lot of missed tackles, and he was able to capitalize on that read option very well. Take us in a little bit to that defense. So, what specifically did Duke kind of do wrong defensively there, and why was he so effective running the ball against that defense?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously I'm not I'm not Jonathan Pack yet.
Right.
I don't know exactly what they're doing, but from my experience covering the team and playing football against teams that run similar schemes to this, usually, so obviously your defensive end usually is going to be your key guy for the offense. So either Vincent Anthony or Wesley Williams, mostly for Duke. And I thought that just last night they caught, I don't know if he was coming up to, VJ and Wesley were coming up too far in their pursuit, but it seemed like a lot of times they kind of caught those two in between the running back and the quarterback. So it's just an easy pull or an easy give for a big gain. Generally, you want to just at least, if you're going to take one away, take it all the way away and make them make a decision. The ideal decision would be to make them hand it off to the middle to all the defenders. But last night it seemed like Retzlaff was able to get around that contain over and over again. And the second level and third level did not do any favors on the tackling front. A lot of missed tackles from the safeties and linebackers there as well. So I just thought, I figured they would have done that all week to prepare. It's Tulane's kind of bread and butter. They've done it the first 2 games, and then now this third game. And everyone kind of knows Retzlaff, that's kind of his game. But it did not. I mean, the first 3 touchdowns he scored, he was never touched. And that just cannot happen in a game, against a good team like that.
Yeah, definitely. And those missed tackles, especially from those secondary guys, was clear, especially when you would bring them in a blitz. Sometimes they would go all out speed 100%, and they wouldn't really have the leverage to, if Retzlaff did like a little juke move, guys like Francois and Stone would be going straight at him, but not able to contain him or tackle, especially in the open field. And then they threw some screens and stuff as well. And those things, I think we've been a little bit spoiled by how good Chandler Rivers is at stopping those. But you got to have those guys on the outside to stop that, because if you're weak on the outside, that'll really hurt the defense going forward. Flipping it to the offensive side, it's funny. Darian Mensah throwing the ball deep. I mean, he made some really, really incredible throws, and not all of them were caught, because a few of them, Cooper Barcade had some where he tiptoed out on the line, and some near misses, but I thought Mensah threw the ball really well. The problem for me on the offense was, and I talked to Coach Diaz about this afterwards, is from 20 to 20, or, from kind of 20-yard line, Duke's own 20-yard line to Tulane's 40-yard line, the offense was really, really good. But when it got up to that point, there were a few plays that really messed up the rhythm of Duke's offense. There were a couple of 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2 runs, which Duke lost 4 or 5 yards, and it became 3rd and 6 and 3rd and 7. And you really just can't do that, especially when you're in opposing territory. And so you mentioned the special teams miscues, but even before that, before you have to kick a field goal, you should be trying to get touchdowns in the red zone. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for Duke moving forward into conference play is, can you convert those to touchdowns? Because honestly, Duke's offense is really able to move the ball well. I talked about the punting last week. Cade Reynolds still 3 punts through the whole season. He had 16 through the first 3 games of last season, only 3 through this year. So they can move the ball well. You just got to finish drives and not turn the ball over.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you definitely on all of that, but especially Mensah, I thought he played well. Obviously, Duke was down pretty substantially for most of the game, so they were really slinging it.
Right.
Which, this is how it was. I think he was the first quarterback to throw 50-plus pass attempts for Duke since Daniel Jones in 2018, so it's been a while. But I thought he did solid. It wasn't his best game, but obviously, the other factors at play, not making excuses for him at all, but it wasn't just like a normal game for Darian Mensah. And for the whole offense, honestly, I mean, the crowd was chanting some not nice things to Darian Mensah for most of the game. And so, I mean, obviously it was tough, coming back playing his old team. But I thought he did pretty well. I'm sure we'll talk about this in a second, but you want to have more than one receiver catch the ball in the first half. That's not ideal. But I did think, I thought the rushing game was good. If we want to move into talking about players, I thought it did well. I think Duke has really found something in Nate Shepherd. It was his homecoming game for him too. He's from Mandeville, Louisiana. A lot of the guys and the media guys yesterday from Louisiana were like, yeah, like he was a beast in high school, and like we can't believe he left the state. And he looked really, really good last night. I think he had 95 total yards, receiving touchdown, 5 carries for 75. He's just hard to bring down. And when he's got some serious speed. When he gets around that corner, he can turn. And yeah, they just had a really hard time with him last night. I thought he was a good change of pace from Jacquez Moore. And then Anderson Castle was a great compliment there. Second half, it was mostly just those two guys. And Moore kind of sat on the bench some more than he's used to, I guess. But I think going forward, the true freshman's really going to have some chances to shine.
Yeah, that combination of speed and being hard to bring down is really, really rare in running back, I think. And Nate Shepherd is great at that. I think he's going to be a great receiving back in the next couple of years, too. He dropped one where he was he got excited, which is understandable from a freshman, but he did score a touchdown on there as well. And a nice little 2-point conversion where he powered his way in. So there's the kind of 2 elements of Shepherd. Yeah, the receiver point is funny because I think for the first, up until midway or late of the second quarter, Quayshawn Brown was the only guy to catch the ball for Duke, and I think Mensah really struggled to get into rhythm early. But throughout the game, in the second half, you saw him get Barcade involved. Anderson Castle even had a bunch of receptions there as they were, especially as Duke was down and really just trying to pass the ball, and Mensah was checking the ball down a lot. But I thought those 2 guys were good, especially. And then on the defensive side of the ball, VJ a couple times had some misses, possible misses on the read option from Retzlaff, but that one hustle play where he forced, which is still the first and only turnover from the Duke defense so far, chased down Retzlaff on a 3rd down conversion, which he was scrambling, and then was able to punch the ball out from behind, and Nick Morris picked it up. So that was a great hustle play from VJ, and I thought he did well there. He mentioned afterwards that, this defense has to step up, and it has to be the leaders of the team that do that and that start it, and he's one of them. So, we'll see what comes from that, but he played really well.
Yeah, I think there's been no doubt Illinois and Tulane the last 2 weeks that he wants it. VJ Anthony had all the guys on defense, he wants it. That Illinois game in the first half, he was just an absolute game wrecker. They could not block him. Obviously, he had, he's more of a pass rusher regardless, so it was maybe a tough matchup for him there with Tulane on the edge. But I thought, that play, the fumble was huge, huge momentum play for Duke to get back in the game there in the first half. But yeah, the rest of the team's going to need to step up to that level of play for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the first 3 non-conference games. Duke is 1-2. We're going to talk about NC State soon coming up, but also just shout out the Tulane SIDs, Tulane
Yeah.
crew there. Everything was great in New Orleans.
Yeah.
We had a great time in that press box
Yeah.
and that stadium.
Yeah, shout out. It was a good setup. Everyone was super nice. And also shout out Tulane. I don't know who their offensive coordinator is. I forget his name, but they had some cool plays last night.
Trickery for
My
sure.
man 73, big boy 73. They kept putting him out there at tight end and motioning him around, and they would run right behind him. It was awesome. They had that backup quarterback that come in and get some mixed up looks. Red Side will play running back or receiver. Tulane definitely. I know you mentioned them in the preseason podcast as your team to watch in the group of 5, and they definitely have looked the part so far. I'm sure they'll have a good rest of the year as well.
Yeah, they have Ole Miss next week, so a big test there, and then let's see if they can run in the American. But great win for Tulane. They played well. They deserve to win that game, and they game planned well. All right, we'll be right back with Daniel Susann from The Technician. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Blue Devil Beat. We're super excited to be joined here by Daniel Susann of The Technician. He is the assistant sports editor there. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to preview the NC State-Duke game with Daniel here. NC State is going to be Duke's first conference game coming to Wallace Wade Stadium at 4 p.m. this Saturday. If you haven't been paying attention to NC State's season so far, started off the campaign 3-0, most recently with a 34-24 win against Wake Forest. Could you talk about that game a little bit? It seemed to be a tale of two halves game for the Wolfpack there. How are they able to win against the Demon Deacons?
Definitely. So the game kind of started out in a chaotic way. Off of the rip, Wake Forest takes back the opening kickoff to the house, automatically goes up 7-0. Then the first drive of the Wolfpack, it's not a 3-and-out, but the offense sputters quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Wake Forest takes it back down the field, quickly up 14-0. So the first half, after that, it was cooked, if I'm being honest. But then CJ Bailey, the sophomore quarterback, not having a sophomore slump this year, so I predicted that. He went down the field. NC State, after going down 14-0, put up 34. Wake Forest only followed up with 10. 34-24 was the final score. And after the opening 2 drives, NC State sort of just dominated the contest, and it was a little bit chaotic. Actually, the food truck outside, it caught on fire, and it didn't burn down completely. But all of that smoke was getting into the stadium, and it was kind of clouding things up. Like the broadcasts, the picture quality was not that great, so it was pretty chaotic. But overall, a good win for the Wolfpack. I mean, Wake Forest hasn't been great. Let's be honest. I think they beat Kennesaw State by 1.
By 1, yeah.
10-9. So at this point in the Wolfpack season, I feel like we don't really have much of a pulse check. But before I go on any further, I'd like to talk about this NC State football team. I'm a senior. My first 2 years, NC State football, the offense has just been abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a terrible watch. Just overall, a terrible experience, akin to Iowa football. And in those days, I yearned for a good offense. I wanted a USC style game. You give up 50 points, maybe you score 52 to win it, or maybe you score 48 to win it. Either way, it's an exciting game.
Right.
Dealing with NC State football, I yearned for that. And now that I have it, I love it.
You have it.
Yeah, there you go.
Good stuff. We can certainly sympathize with some extraordinary circumstances at the game. Yesterday at the Tulane Duke game, the scoreboard went out starting in the second quarter, so we didn't know. Nobody knew what time it was in the first half, so we were just guessing. The PA announcer would chime in randomly to tell how much time was left, but I don't think anyone knew how much time was left.
No, it was terrible. Yeah,
it was wild.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that second half, NC State was really able to lock in on defense against Wake Forest. Was there anything specifically that you saw that changed for the Wolfpack and that they were able to be more successful against? Obviously, the kickoff at the start of the game is a little bit of an anomaly there, but what did you see from that defense?
I think when the Wolfpack thrives, it's when they're getting to the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So far this season, they're among the worst in sacks. They have just 2 sacks, one of them coming in the previous game. But when they're getting to the quarterback, when they're forcing pressures, they're a lot more successful, and they haven't been. That's part of the reason why I believe they're 100 or they're 10th worst in the FBS in passing yards allowed.
Oh, yeah.
So statistically, they have not been great, and 120th, actually 122nd in sacks in the FBS. So just they have not been good. Forcing pressures, but when they were forcing pressures, they had success against Wake Forest.
Yeah. Going back to the offense, so maybe a little bit more fun for the Wolfpack. You talk about CJ Bailey. What has made him so dynamic in his sophomore year? Obviously, he's a big time player, one of the top quarterbacks in his class. Just what have you seen from him this year that's made him that much better?
He's going through his progressions, and he's being more successful in the air, and also he's really utilizing his legs in a different way. He's much more. He's through his progressions, and if he's not seeing them, he's rushing, and he's been very successful on the ground in tandem with Hollywood Smothers, who leads the FBS in rushing yards.
You mentioned Hollywood Smothers right there. You got some other key players on offense. Justin Jolly's been great as well. Talk us through some of the playmakers on this offense around CJ Bailey and how they really kind of round out a really terrifying unit for the rest of the country.
Yeah, Jolie in his first 2 games, he was kind of inactive, and some fans, some media members, they were kind of questioning like what's going on with the offense. And then Wake Forest, they gave him the ball. He had 2 touchdowns. So he's been a lot more active. And he was in the Wake Forest game, and the questions about, is he going to show up? Like from last year, Casey Concepcion, he was like our touted wide receiver. He was inactive for much of the season, and people were kind of wondering, like, is he going to show up? Well, Justin Jolie finally showed up, so.
He's a big Casey Concepcion fan, Calvis.
Yeah, Casey is a beast. Obviously he's having a good year at A&M now, so
Speaking of an A&M, I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
What are you guys thinking about Mike Elko? Like, how do you feel about him? Are you rooting for him, or?
I'm certainly not rooting for him, I would say. I think he did a lot of good things for the Duke football program. I think we as seniors now we've seen kind of the results of that, but I would not say I'm a big fan of the way he went about leaving this program. And just the way he went out and didn't really thank any of the people at Duke or talk to any other players and just kind of left. Midnight Mike, as the saying goes. And so, I wouldn't say I'm turning on the TV on Saturdays and hoping the Aggies pull it out. But
yeah, it's a fair point, and the way he ended and left was not great. But I do think there is something to be said about how his influence in turning around the Duke's program, because when he came, Duke was struggling 3-9, 2-10 type seasons, and he really changed the culture around Duke. And Manny Diaz has done a great job of continuing that, but Elko was a big part in turning that around. As far as him at Texas A&M is a little bit weird, and it feels like a little bit of a betrayal, but he's an excellent coach, excellent defensive coach, and now that they have Marcel Reed playing the way he does, they're a flyer in a dark horse that I think could do some damage this season. So,
I will say I do not hold that animosity for any other Duke staffer that left, notably Trooper Taylor, SID, Kat Kastner, shout out Kat as well. But yeah, the main up top is my main gripe.
Yeah, fair enough.
I get that.
Okay. So going back to the Wolfpack, maybe just give us somebody that's on either side of the ball you think is an X factor. Maybe someone who's not talked about as much on offense or defense you think could have a big factor in this game on Saturday.
I think the linebacker core could really make a big difference because the defense has been struggling.
Okay.
If Caden Fordham and Sean Brown really get things together, they've been missing some tackles in the first few games, and if they kind of iron that out a little bit, that'll be a big difference because I expect this game to be high scoring and chaotic, similar to the last game that was on national television between these two athletic programs. If you remember Duke versus NC State basketball, that was pretty chaotic. I expect it to be chaotic in a different way, but if you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that right there. You expect it to be chaotic. You like high scoring. I think you're probably going to get high scoring the way both offenses and defenses have been playing on a positive or negative end. If you're NC State, what do you think are some keys to win for the Wolfpack? And then after that, maybe I'll ask you to give a score prediction if you go.
Just pound the ball. They've been very successful when Hollywood Smothers has been very active. I mean, he has 380 rushing yards so far this season. And when he's been active, it's really freed up CJ to do what he does on the ground and in the air.
Yeah.
Pound the ball for sure.
Score pick? Sorry, I had to put you on the spot like that.
45-42. That'll be fun.
Who's on?
Duke.
All right, 45-42. There you go. Okay. What's the crowd going to be like from NC State? Are you bringing a lot of people?
I think there's going to be more NC State fans than Duke
fans. That does seem like that could be.
Speaking of that, how was the crowd in Tulane?
There was actually a lot of Duke fans at Tulane. It was not a bad group. I mean, for us, a long way. The stadium's not huge at Tulane, but they had a sellout. Student section was really full, but there was a good
There was a
crowd.
good Duke contention. There was a weird storming the field situation that happened last night. It was almost like they
Really?
walked to storm the field. It was like a walking
Like
procession,
7
and
of
then
them went on the field, and then the rest of
and
them
then it was like a
literally
very delayed
went on the field. Yeah.
storming of the field.
Why are they storming the field for beating?
They were favored, and they were I don't know.
I think there's just a lot of animosity towards Darian Mensah, and
Okay.
they let him hear it. We were mentioning earlier there are some words we cannot mention on this podcast that they hurled at him when he
Yeah,
was entering
absolutely.
and throughout the first few possessions. So Darian had to deal with a lot of that. But yeah, the crowd this week will be interesting to see because honestly, the past couple of years, Duke has had pretty decent crowd sizes, but the first 2 games this year
No.
were, relatively, not
Yeah.
packed in Walsall Stadium, aside from the student section.
Illinois took over that game.
Yeah.
The Illinois contingent was huge, and obviously Illinois is a little bit farther than Raleigh, so I'm sure they'll be a pretty
Just a
good pool of red in the stands.
Yeah. All right, Daniel. Well, tell us a little bit about what you guys got going on at the Technician. How can people see your coverage, follow you guys? You guys do great stuff over there. So plug away, my friend.
So just technicianonline.com. We got all our stuff. Obviously, we have like news, culture, opinion, those sections and stuff. But check out the sports section. It's me, Connor Vandermark, and Josiah Lee. We're all running it, and it's been good content so far. So check it out.
Good stuff. Well, check it out there at the Technician. Daniel, thank you so much for talking to us for a little bit about this game. We're super excited to watch it, and we'll be keeping an eye on those guys. And yeah, everyone should check out their stuff. Daniel, thank you so much again, man.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll be right back. So great stuff there from Daniel, of course. And a 45-42. I love the score pick, high scoring. Let's flip the question that I asked him on the other side. If you're Duke, what does Duke need to do to win this game? And then I'll also ask for a score prediction from you.
I mean, the main thing is just they can't have these stupid penalties and beat themselves. I know it's kind of cliche to say, but it's the most obvious thing. Coach Diaz says it's the most obvious thing. They're not playing the way they should be playing. He said a lot of that's on him, but it's on everybody. Just things that you always say control what you can control, and they're not. But yeah, I think Daniel mentioned State's defense is not good. I wouldn't put Duke's defense on par with that. I think State's defense is substantially worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think they played better against Wake, especially on the run defense. Virginia, when they almost beat NC State, they gashed 8 yards a carry or something like that. It was crazy. So I think Duke could find a lot of success there. But I think, the main thing is just not these self-inflicted wounds are been killer. You want me to go score prediction too?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think after the last 2 weeks I can pick Duke in good faith. Here against a really good offense, another really good team. So I think I'll go a little bit lower scoring, but I think it'll be a offensive shootout again. I'll go, let's go 35-28 NC State. I was going to say 35-31, but I don't want to copy their score from Virginia game, so I'll go 35-28 Wolfpack.
I was thinking that same thing, but flip teams.
Yeah.
I agree. I just think it's interesting to see Duke against another quarterback who has dual threat ability. He mentioned his rushing attack. How many times is this going to happen before Manny Diaz and Pat are, actually make significant changes? This coaching staff has been really good at adjustments throughout their career, and we've only had a year and change of evidence, but I think this is a game where Duke really resets. ACC play is a good natural reset time, and I still think there's a work in progress left with the defense, and I still think there's going to be some learning curves just because of how good Hollywood Smothers and CJ Bailey are. But 2 things I'll say for keys. 1, I sound like a broken record on this, but the defense got to continue getting turnovers and flip possessions because Duke has been so good at turning the ball over the past 3 seasons. I think near the top or led the country over the past few years in turnovers. And you got 1 against Tulane, and that play itself was so big. Can you do that against CJ Bailey and NC State? Secondly, for the defense is red zone defense, because I think NC State's going to do a good job moving the ball against Duke just because of how dynamic their offense is. But can you turn it from 7 to 3 points for them? And on the flip side, obviously, Duke's offense has to do that. I don't think Duke's offense is going to have trouble scoring very many points here. So I'll also say kind of a 35-28, maybe even 38-28 vibe. Slight edge because of the home crowd, although, like Daniel said, it might be a little bit more even of a crowd split than you might think. But that's my pick there.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the very base level, regardless of what happens, I think it'll be super fun to watch Mensah and CJ Bailey go at it. 2 young guys who could very well end up being the top quarterbacks in their class of 2020, I guess 7 draft class that would be.
Yeah.
I know Bailey's getting a lot of hype right now, and well deserved. He's played spectacular. So to see those two go at it will be definitely a treat on Saturday.
Yeah, got a 6'6", very lanky frame. I've been a big fan of Bailey, and he's gonna present some challenges for sure. So we'll see what Pat Key and crew can come up with, and we'll see what VJ Anthony said after Tulane will ring true.
Yeah.
All right, so let's give us a little bit of the other fall sports rundown of what's been happening across campus. We didn't do that last week, so we got a couple of weeks of catching up. But yeah.
Yeah. So a lot's been happening, like you mentioned. I'll just kind of run down the list. I have a list here. I'll start with men's golf. They had their first fall. It's not their season right now, but they had their first kind of fall tournament. They hosted at the Washington Duke the Rod Myers Invitational. They won that.
There you go.
First event under new head coach Bob Heinz, who was promoted from assistant to head coach now. Pretty handily win there, so that was good for men's golf. Field hockey lost to number 1 Northwestern. Happens. Beat number 4 Maryland though, right following that, so a nice bounce back, and then beat William & Mary 9-0. So it seems like maybe something was figured out after that game with the Wildcats. Women's soccer has been really busy. They played 3 games in the last week. They tied Alabama 1-1, lost 3-1 to number 5 Virginia, and then just today, as we're recording this, they just finished a win over Miami 1-0. Women's golf also had their first fall event at the Annika Intercollegiate in Minnesota. Women's golf this year coming in at preseason number 6, so pretty serious hype there for the squad. Not the best showing compared to their ranking. They finished 9th at the Annika. But again, it's the fall. Golf is a long way away, so just kind of getting the kinks out. I think there's a lot of couple newcomers to that team as well. Volleyball struggling again. 1-2 this week. 1 win in the middle, sandwiched between 2 losses, was a win over Utah Valley at home. And then women's tennis to close it out before you talk about men's tennis. Women's tennis is at the Kitty Harrison Invitational in Chapel Hill for their first fall action. I can only find the results for Friday so far, and all 5 singles players for Duke lost. So that's not great. But again, it's the fall. So yeah, a lot of season to go for all those teams.
Yeah, and just also shout out the couple men's tennis players, Cooper Williams and Theo Winogard, were up in New York playing at the U.S. Open a couple weeks ago. They won a first round playing doubles together. Their second round was really, really close. Played a tough match against the 4th-seeded group up there, but Cooper and Theo played really, really well and represented Duke in a great way. And then also Garrett Johns, who's a Duke alum, won a couple qualifying rounds in the singles wild card. So Duke men's tennis has a couple key, really good returners, so we'll see what Ramsey Smith's squad can do this year. But again, tennis and golf are kind of in their early stages here, kind of getting warmed up in this fall slate. But spring should be exciting.
I think I saw swim and dive starts next week, so that'll add that one to the list. And then before we know it, we'll be talking about basketball as well. So
countdown to crazy is 20 days away or something?
Maybe 19 now. 19 now. So coming up before we know it.
All right, before we close this out, we'll do a quick little stock up, stock down. We can keep it in the ACC, I guess, or we can go national, whatever you feel like. It's been another crazy week of college football.
I'll take national.
Okay.
I think stock. Well, I'll stick in the conference for stock up, and I'll go national for stock down.
There you go.
Stock up is Miami. They look just as good as last year, if not better. I think they look better. The defense is just much improved. They have a lot of new guys, and they're just playing hard, man. They demolished South Florida, who I mention on here every week is my team, Group 5. And they handled them. In Miami, it was not close. Carson Beck looks like the Carson Beck before his injury. At Georgia, he looks really, really good. They have a lot of good weapons. So I think Miami, they're up number 4 now as of today, and so maybe the favorite now to win the ACC. Then stock down, I think it's just a bad time to be a top quarterback prospect. All of them has just not been good. I don't know what's going on with them, but I'll just run down the list real fast. Arch Manning has been bad. I don't know if he's maybe hurt. Drew Aller still hasn't learned to just hand it off to his running backs at Penn State. Garrett Nussmeier had a terrible play last night against Florida. They only scored 20 points against Florida. DJ Lagway threw 5 picks in that same game. It's just not been good. Kate Klubnik in the loss to Georgia Tech wasn't great either. It's just not a bad time. It's not a good time. Lenore Sellers, concussion. It's just been rough. It's been rough. But there are a couple guys that have stood out. Fernando Mendoza being one of them in that class, and then Dante Moore at Oregon has been really good as well. But the quarterback play around the country has just not been ideal. Honestly, Vince has been one of the better ones out there. It's him and CJ Bailey have been 2 of the better quarterbacks in the country so far. So yeah, just quarterback play all around has been tough to watch.
Yeah, a couple positives on that note. I'll throw John Mateer in that bunch, but I also thought Joey Aguilar from Tennessee looked pretty good. And also Gunnar Stockton for Georgia. Both of those offenses looked pretty good against each other. And, we'll see. Maybe they can make some noise within the SEC respectively. But, that was a great game, which Tennessee should have won, by the way. Such a college kicker moment. I feel so bad for that kicker.
I mean, yeah. And then what a college moment, too, for Notre Dame, Tyler Buchner. In his 18th year in college, he, is getting now. I mean, muff the hold for whoever wasn't watching, and ended up maybe losing in that game. It was a 41-40, I believe, was the final, and a huge win for Mike Elko and company in College Station. So, or not, well, they played in South Bend, but College Station is Texas A&M. So yes, Notre Dame down to 0-2 to start the season after a lot of high hopes. I think they're still pretty good. I mean, CJ Carr's look really, really good for first time starting out, but they got to get it right fast or they're going to be in danger.
Yeah, and that was going to be my stock up right there, A&M. I thought, it was kind of a crazy last fourth down play, throw it up to the tight end, and they did nicely there. But Marcel Reed is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Their defense has talent, especially up front, and they have a talented running game. And I think with Marcel Reed bringing up their ceiling higher, and we talked about Elko a little bit earlier in the podcast, how great of a defensive coach he is, I think this is a team to watch within the SEC as well. Yeah. Stock down, well, I guess I had one, but I'll do two. I guess I'll be negative today. Sorry. One is news right before this podcast is Virginia Tech, who has just fired their coach, Brent Pry, after 4 seasons, maybe. I think this is fourth or fifth. 3 losses, and the last of which was to Old Dominion, which
it was not close.
It wasn't close, 45-26, and it was worse than that, I think, a little bit earlier in the season. And it's funny, we talked about Brent Pry over at ACC Media Days, really had confidence in his team, and this was supposed to be a bounce back year for Kyron Drones after a sketchy sophomore season and a great freshman campaign, but the defensive end of the ball just has been bad, starting from that second half against Vanderbilt where they just started giving up touchdowns galore. And yeah, it's just been brutal. I think they need to go a different direction. There's obviously so much pedigree around that program, and that stadium's great, and so it's better for the ACC if they're good, but yeah, that's not good for them. And then other one, I was going to mention that Clemson-Georgia Tech game, so I guess stock up for Georgia Tech and stock down for Clemson. Talking about preseason expectations versus reality from what's happening, I kind of mentioned earlier in the season, or in our podcast season, about Cade Klubnik's play against some of the better teams towards the end of last season, and he played really well against Texas, but against Louisville, Pitt, South Carolina, not great. And I don't think he particularly played poorly against Georgia Tech. I just think the offense wasn't consistent enough. They had some really good drives, but then some that were stymied at the end, and Cade made some ill-advised throws, and then some kind of 3-and-outs there. But I was really impressed with how Haynes King was able to kind of put his team on the back there at the end. They needed one drive to go for it, and Haynes King, with however many healthy shoulders and legs and knees he has, is going to fight. And shout out to that kicker for nailing a 55-yarder or something like that to win the game. But Georgia Tech has a very favorable schedule moving forward, and for Clemson, I think you got to have some really soul searching for this team as you move forward. You got some favorable matchups coming ahead. The season's not over, but got a long way to go if you want to make back to the ACC championship, which is what a lot of people thought Clemson would do. Part of that is, getting Antonio Williams back and healthy, but both sides of the ball have to play better for the Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, I think Haynes King, man, that dude, he's a grinder. He's a grinder. I don't know how he's still, able to even function on the field. It seems like every game he has some kind of injury. It looks like he should be out for weeks. And he just comes out there and he just keeps gritting it out. Like you mentioned, Georgia Tech, obviously the schedule is very favorable. I had them making the conference championship at the start of the year. I don't feel bad about that at all, but I think, interesting to see if he holds up all season. That was their problem last year, is his shoulder kind of fell off during the season. I think he played with a torn labrum, I think was what it was. But yeah, they're dang good. And Key's done a really good job there, and they're back to being prominent. So hopefully, you mentioned Virginia Tech, hopefully they'll be able to get back to that level as well, just to make the conference better all around.
Yeah, Key's done a fantastic job. There was a stat about to hit him against ranked competition or being an underdog, and it was really, really good. So credit to Georgia Tech there. All right, well, another week of college football in the books, another crazy one. This weekend, a lot of conference play starting, so that's exciting, especially for Duke. As always, check out our content, dukechronicle.com. We'll have great coverage from the NC State game and throughout the week. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you back next week with a recap of that game, and we'll preview the Syracuse game. Is that after NC State? Syracuse is after that.
On the road.
Yeah, start of a ACC road trip to New York and then California. So classic ACC there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a great week. Enjoy this weekend of college football coming up, and we'll see you next Sunday. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been Blue Devil Beat.